Greetings and welcome to this special IMCCA webcast, this time being sponsored by my colleagues and friends at Poly, talking about what's going on during the pandemic that we're dealing with from an end user perspective. We have enterprise technology managers on with us, and we're going to really ask them how are they coping with this sudden remote workforce and these environments that we never really expected to be in. Also different this time is I have a co-host. Why don't you introduce yourself, Stephanie, and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you, David. My name is Stephanie Atkinson. I'm the CEO of Compass Intelligence. We are a market research and advisory firm, and primarily focusing on enterprise mobility, Internet of Things, and emerging technologies. So I'm glad to be here today, and I welcome the discussion.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I'm going to just break from my normal pattern here for a second and put up a quick gallery view of everybody that's on the call, so you can get a sense if you guys want to wave and smile and be happy with everything. So this is who we're talking to today, and I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves in the order that we have on the listing here on my panel, which actually then starts with Pete. So Pete, why don't you say hello and tell everybody what you do?
Hi, I'm Pete Kolak. I'm with Intuit, and I'm responsible for all the conference rooms globally around the world.
Thank you, Pete. Next on my list is Nancy. Can you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do?
Sure. My name is Nancy Trefny. I'm a project manager at Morgan Stanley in the multimedia group.
Thank you, Nancy. Mike Duda, say hi and tell everybody what you do.
Hey everybody, it's Michael Duda. I'm at Google. I'm a program manager there.
Thank you, Michael. Mark?
Hello everyone. My name is Mark Brown. I work for Swiss Re. I'm responsible for multimedia projects and engineering in the Americas region.
Thank you, Mark. Next on my list is Kimberly.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kimberly Day. I'm Senior Director of IT Employee Enablement at Poly, colleague of David's, and I am responsible for the productivity and collaboration of our workforce.
Thank you, Kimberly. Jim?
Thanks, Dave. Name's Jim Floyd. I work for Verizon, where I'm a senior manager of mobility. My responsibility is effectively to manage every single mobile device for every business line and knowledge worker at Verizon.
Thank you very much. Gary?
Thank you, David. My name is Gary Lasasso. I'm the Director of Collaboration Experiences and Technologies at Amicus Therapeutics. We're a biotech company researching treatments and cures for very rare diseases. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks a lot. And finally, Evan, say hi.
How you doing? My name is Evan Scott-Smith. I design and engineer multimedia projects for Morgan Stanley in North America, and I'm a colleague of Nancy's.
Well, thank you all very much for joining, and I do appreciate you taking the time, because it's not, you didn't have to do this, and it's very appreciated that we hear about this. So my big question right now, and anybody who wants to answer this can speak up before I start calling you out, is how are you handling this, man? All of a sudden you flip a switch and every one of your workers are now mobile and home and remote. How's it turning out? How's it working?
Dave,
So Dave, I can answer from a Morgan Stanley standpoint. Right now, I think the CEO had said we have about 70,000 Morgan Stanley employees working remotely globally at this point. It's been a change for everybody, but I think in overall that we were equipped for it. The back end is supporting it pretty nicely. Everybody's equipped with some tool, maybe not all the same tools as everybody has, but everybody has a tool or multiple tools to get through this. And generally speaking, I don't want to say we're business as usual, because that's kind of under scaling it a little bit, but we're going about as if business as usual. So, Evan, unless you have any different feeling, I think it's worked pretty well. There's a few latencies, which everybody's having that issue. People late getting onto the calls because of their individual bandwidth. But overall, I think people are pretty content with being able to conduct business.
Yeah, I think
so if I can add.
Go ahead, Evan, and then Jim, and then Gary. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you zoom out like super macro, everyone that wanted to work from home, you got your wish. How are you liking it? And, like for me, work was always something that, I go to work, was someplace I always went to. Now I'm not really going to that place. So it's an adjustment. I prefer going to work than working from home, personally.
Jim, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, from my particular role, there's been very little impact, which is actually surprising. But that's because the vast majority of Verizon employees already have a very robust mobile experience available to them. You know, we use the G Suite environment. We have all the Google apps that are on that, and everything else that is sort of parrots what's on our desktops. I will say though, Verizon has been very, in the past, amenable to work from home, but hasn't really been part of the culture, and they've really had to step up and ramp up to get a lot of the back end systems, the Citrix-based systems, to get people on board for their work from home experience, which has been interesting, but they did it very quickly and fairly successfully.
Good to hear. Gary, you wanted to add something there?
Sure. I know, Dave, you've been a proponent of getting the voice of our end users, and we've always done that. And one of the interesting things, about an hour ago, I got an email from one of our colleagues, and he said, as I continue to hear from non-amicus colleagues how difficult connectivity is for them right now, it's worth mentioning how smooth this transition has been as an amicuser. These things don't happen by accident. Truly appreciate it. So while I'm not sure if amicuser is a real word, his sentiment is, you know, we're hearing that a lot from our end users, that, and he's right, it wasn't by accident. Our entire IT team spent, you know, a lot of time on our network, on our collaboration tools, rolling out collaboration tools, Microsoft 365, et cetera, and Blue Jeans. And I think it's been that planning. We didn't realize we were planning for this. And we didn't realize this was the crisis management and disaster recovery we were planning for, but it's worked. And from a tech perspective, I think from our, you know, sitting as an IT person, you know, we've been mostly in the cloud. Everyone has laptops. Everyone has collaboration software enabled on their laptops, and we've already done the adoption, so that's been a big plus. There have certainly been pockets of issues, and that's, you know, and that's going to be the case no matter what. But yeah, and I think we've maintained a connected workforce too with all of the tools. We've been able to connect with each other, you know, as well as connect with our patients. And for us, that's our mission, to connect with our patients. And so we've been able to do that because of all these collaboration tools.
Well, that's great to hear. Pete, let me give everybody a shot at this. You want to give us your thoughts as to what your intern's been experiencing?
So I could tell you my role is overseeing a group of on-site support technicians who both do live event support and in-room operational fixes and things of conference rooms. That has been very interesting to try to figure out how you keep everybody busy working from home when their normal job is to go in conference rooms and fix them. So we've been actually working a lot with cleaning up a lot of our resources and tools that we use, web pages that have, you know, inaccurate data on them, spreadsheets that don't have accurate counts on them, those kinds of things we've been working a lot on internally. As a company, we've made a very large move to everyone being from home, which has pretty much stretched, I think, a lot of the backbone of our company, right? So how do we do communications? Everyone knows Zoom and Blue Jeans and other companies are running at 2-3 times their normal capacity. How does that affect your normal daily conference room calls, or not conference room calls, but conference calls, and how do you support that? So we actually had to remodel how our support level works as a remote model for the temporary time being, which was actually a pretty big lift, but we did it in a relatively short period of time.
Okay. Kimberly, what are your experiences been?
Yeah, you know, I agree with a lot of what Gary said, and that resonates with me. And I feel like, you know, we're here at Poly, very advantageous position kind of coming into this, because we were very well prepared in terms of the products that we have, as well as our culture. About 8 or 9 years ago, when I first joined Poly, we embarked on this mission that at the time we called Smarter Working, but it was about enabling our workforce to be more flexible in where and how they worked. So at that time, we started ramping up not only on our culture as well as the tools and the technologies to support that culture. For years, we've no longer been buying desktops for our employees. It's always been laptops. We've been ramping up our networks and our VPN technology, all with the goal of enabling a remote workforce, which a great deal of our workforce was already remote even before this. So I feel like we were very well equipped for this, again, products-wise as well as culture-wise. So it hasn't been a huge shift for us. Like Gary said, there are some exceptions to this, and we're managing around those exceptions as well.
Okay, good to hear. And Mark, let's give you the last word on that question. How are you doing?
I feel like I should talk about my wife. Her company implemented Teams faster than mine did. She works for a fashion company of about 150 people, which really made me very jealous. But Swiss Re, we're doing really well. We already had a laptop culture. We have a BCM nightly requirement to bring our laptops home. We have a great VPN infrastructure. We have a workplace policy called Own the Way You Work. So we actually encourage people to work the hours and locations that's convenient for them and their lifestyle. We even rolled out Teams this week. Happened to be the week we rolled it out for the entire company. And everything seems to be spot on. I'm very glad about that.
So you rolled out Teams after everybody had been working from home, or just before?
We had been Skype for a while, and the enterprise folks on here certainly understand this. When you start rolling and getting ready for your next platform, the old platform doesn't necessarily get all the attention. And there might have been a push to roll it out early because of this. I'm not really sure on that. But it was pushed to all laptops over the weekend. And some of the users are still using Skype because that's what they're familiar with. But I think more and more people are dipping their toe into the water. I had some calls with corporate real estate today, and they were excited to try it for the first time. It's been going really well. It's, to me, someone who works from home a few days a week, I don't notice a difference other than my wife bugging me for IT support.
Oh yeah,
Hey, Mark.
being the home IT support is definitely one of the things that's taking a lot of my time. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that, Mark. That's really interesting and great to hear. Before this happened, we at Poly, all our users already had Teams and were using it in some fashion or another. But we were on a project and a goal to disable all of our legacy Skype environment and get everybody fully cut over to Teams. So it's only Teams and disabling that Skype piece. When this happened, we had a lot of questions, is this the right time to be doing this? Should we really be continuing with this migration? And, we talked it through and thought, yeah, there's no better time than this time to be doing this and making sure that, we're all on the same collaboration platform, that we're synchronized in how we communicate and collaborate with each other. And so we've been pushing forward, and we're getting great feedback from all of our users, and the migration has been going great, despite everybody being remote.
Stephanie, you have anything for everybody?
Along those lines, we have many of us out there, especially if you think about small and mid-sized businesses, we rely on our home internet a lot. I've been working from home for 18 plus years. So I'm curious from you guys, you think about all of the families that are now at home and they're homeschooling and, they're logging online for that. And then they also have multiple family members on their home network. Are you seeing any opportunities or anything that you would do different to help improve the connectivity for your at-home workers, or is there something that changes there because we are relying more on our home internet or our home Wi-Fi for services? How do you look at that? Is that something that you think about now that this whole dynamic has changed?
I'll start. I've already advised several friends of mine to get rid of their old home routers that the cable companies are giving them and get a mesh network type router. I use the Google one. I love it. The other thing I've asked people to do is download an app called, it's only available on Android. It's called Wi-Fi Analyzer. You can find out who's on the same channel you are and see who's stomping on your channel. It might be your neighbors and everything else. So, right now I haven't noticed any degradation of my internet speed over the last 2 weeks, and I've been checking daily. But I do look at this Wi-Fi analyzer, and I've seen the vast majority of my neighbors are all in the same area, so I've shifted away in order to get better coverage. But more, I think the moral of the story is that people are going to start becoming a little more tech savvy as to how their networks are run at home now, because they need it more than they ever did before.
It's interesting. I want to keep the topic going. I am actually even noticing some chop from some of you guys on the participating in the call, which I'm certainly going to be, amenable with, because we're all pounding home bandwidth. But I did forget to get Mike Duda involved in the last round. So, Mike, you want to try and answer this question about how working from home has been from you and how it's been reacting and what you've noticed with the home internet?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll add more to the initial question you asked about the general culture of working from home and like how that has been in general. And I think I have a lot less to say, frankly, around the bandwidth thing, because it actually hasn't really been a concern thanks to Fios. Thank you, Jim. But I think, it's interesting. We have about 270,000 people working at Google, and our culture has already kind of been that it's okay. I mean, very similar to what Mark was saying, right? To own the hours that you work, to own your work, and to prioritize however you need to in order to get your job done. What I think is interesting with the current scenarios, there's an extra layer that I think many people didn't recognize was going to be a factor, which was, for any of us who have kids at home, or any of us who now have to play caretaker in general, not just to kids, but maybe to elderly ones, that eats into your time, right, that you have during the business day. And I think what's interesting here is how have expectations have changed for employers, right, to understand that there's an extra workload here for the users, the employees. And so how can all of that work out balance-wise to continue business as usual, but also give people the flexibility that they need to take care of their loved ones during a challenging time like this. And I think, I'm fortunate in that our company has really kind of taken a very clear mandate on that and said, take care of your family first. Work will be there. We'll figure it out together. And if you need to take time off to do that, please do. But I wish, frankly, I wish that was the case more everywhere. And I see a lot of the companies that are probably on the small to mid-size range, not being able to really afford that type of flexibility. And so, just kind of recognizing that, I think, goes a long way.
Thank you, Mike. And getting back to Jim, what you were talking about, the idea of the connectivity and what people are experiencing. I'm also a very satisfied home Fios user as well, so kudos for you on that one. I have noticed though that if we start to let people work from home as we have to now, when we get to the end of this pandemic situation, we're going to find ourselves with people saying, I think this really worked. So are companies now going to have to pay for home internet because it's an expectation to be there for disaster recovery? And if the companies are going to have to pay for home internet, are they going to keep offices as big? So Gary, I know you were itching to reply to when Jim started talking, but I think it's a great question that Stephanie raises, is how is this whole thing going to turn out once we get out the other end of this?
Yeah, that it's a great question. I wish I had the perfect answer for you. I will say this. It's actually a question for Jim, or continuing that conversation. You mentioned, you using a mesh router and swapping out your router. I have a hard enough time getting people to use headsets in video calls. Getting them to switch out equipment is going to be a challenge. And I agree, there are some best practices, and we were just talking about this earlier in an IT staff meeting about, what are the things that we can do that we haven't done already, to give people, best practices or lists or things that you should do. We are noticing that some of the problems, or most of the problems, that are happening on video calls are that, that quote unquote last mile. and connection to the homes, and for whatever reasons, so, and then sort of going back to your specific question, David, I think it will absolutely impact real estate decisions and facilities decisions. We're looking at, we're 5 years into conference rooms, and we're looking at what we're going to do with our conference rooms, over the next 12 months. This is definitely changing some of my thinking, and kind of, people all of a sudden bring your own device is pretty easy now. So, maybe it should be in more conference rooms, as one example. But yeah, it definitely will. And then we're actually in the process now of in our facilities group about looking at real estate, and I'm certain that it's going to have an impact on, the size of the type of space and size of space that we need going forward.
Yeah, so Morgan Stanley started this probably about 3 years ago. I guess I've been there too. So yeah, 3 years ago. And, they are making, and I want to say agile, and I put that in quotes because it's not actually agile. It's flexible, and we're doing a lot more hoteling now. And that's really just to cut down on the real estate that they're buying and leasing. So Morgan Stanley had started to adapt people working from home because of that. They were hoteling, they were, work from home 3 days a week, 2 days a week. So I think that has helped in this. We weren't there yet. We're still continuing doing that, but we weren't there yet that everybody had that capability. But I do think that did help because a majority of the people, especially in the New York area, had started to maybe pick up the work from home. Obviously not 4 weeks in a row, but just. I definitely think, Dave, I think this will definitely impact, even where we go with stuff. We have started cutting down our real estate over the last couple of years and consolidating all our locations for that reason. But I actually think it may impact it just, a little bit more based on the fact that they realize 70,000 people are working from home and it's okay. We're getting our business done.
Anyone else?
Yeah, yeah, Dave, I'll sort of add a little more to it. I think this is going to be, my wife and I were talking about it last night. She mentioned the term Darwinism. I think really that's what's going to happen with a lot of companies. It reminds me of when, I'll use this as an analogy, before Columbus proved the world, didn't just drop off at the edge of the ocean, every science and every political and religious leader all said that, no one believed the earth was round, and then it was round all of a sudden. I think you're going to see a lot of business leaders who have denied this to either their employees or denied this was capable for their business are now going to have to capitulate and state that this is the obvious direction for them, potentially.
Well, it's going to require new training, isn't it? Isn't it going to require that we teach managers how to manage other than making sure their people are showing up on time and leaving on time? It's going to require managing by, my company, Poly is terrific when it comes to this. We're always on flex time. We just do whatever we need to do whenever we need to do it. And as long as what we're supposed to accomplish gets done, nobody cares about anything. They treat us like adults, and that's fabulous. And you get some of that at a lot of the Silicon Valley companies, but it's starting to move forward into, general business in that, you need a different kind of workforce to manage your remote staff. And like many of us have said on this call, I've been doing this, for more than 20 years, and I have no problem with it. It's not for everybody. Some people prefer the intimacy, but it's going to require a lot of additional training, not just technology.
Agreed. I call it time shifting. To me, I've told my teams for years, and I've been doing this. I've been working home steadily now for 7 years, and probably 10 off and on at least. But I've always said, the job is due at a certain date and time. I don't care when you do it, right? And you're right. Treat your staff like adults, and have as many meetings as you can, and with video if you can to create that intimacy. But effectively, I think this is going to be the new normal for a lot of companies, and you are right. People are going to have to learn how to manage in these scenarios, and I think it's our job and our responsibility, and we can also do a lot of good for our business and what we do to help train those people. Not to give a shout out to you, Dave, but personally, you published something on Twitter, your guide to working from home, and I sent that to our folks here at Verizon to use in our literature to help use for ideas. I mean, you've been doing it for a long time. I thought it was a good idea for them.
Yeah, and personally, what gets to me is that, I've been advocating remote working for close to, 15, 20 years at this point, and all the publications, the business publications that have been saying, no, it won't work, no, it can't work, no, it's terrible, everybody's lazy, everybody's going to be sleeping. Now, all of a sudden, they have their experts talking about how to work from home. So, it's
The
interesting.
world was never round until it is.
Exactly. Stephanie, again, over to you. Any other questions from you?
No, I would agree. I'd say it's quite the opposite. Since I've started working from home 18 plus years ago, I feel like I work more hours during the week. So I put a lot more into it. And it's almost like my work, email, text, whatever, is that any communications that are coming in, it's almost like I work 24/7. As long as I'm awake, I'm going to be responding to those emails and getting back to folks. There are times that I turn it off and there are times that I don't. But I think it is interesting what you said, Jim, about how we may see kind of an eye-opening for a lot of companies who have been putting this off for a very long time and have been so focused on corporate liable, very stringent policies and, really keeping an eye on their employees where they see, hey, this is happening and we can do this and it's working quite well. Why do we not give our employees the tools that they need? In many cases, it might just be we need better tools or more improved tools and maybe improving our security requirements. So I think there is some light at the end of all of this, and that might be that we're going to find a new way of work for many companies that haven't done this in the past. So I love that perspective. I wanted to ask you guys about, I think that David and I talked yesterday about, or a few days ago about talking to all of you. I want to know if there have been any surprises or anything that has happened since we've kind of gone into this lockdown mode that you were surprised about or that kind of caught your eye or have given you kind of an alarm or something that you're going to change within your organization, especially when you get back to working in your offices. Anything?
Hey, Stephanie, this is Kimberly. I actually do have one thing exactly related to that. I manage our global service desk, all of the folks who support our end users. And in the past, we've always talked about, how we structure our service desk and, we have to be able to support our users in person, live, what we call the walk-up experience, where somebody will take their laptop and come to the service desk and say, help me with this. And we've always thought we absolutely need to be able to have that experience for our end users. Well, now we don't have a walk-up experience. We can't have a walk-up experience, right? All of our users are at home, and all of my service desk folks are working from home, supporting those users. And the eye-opener for me has been that our service has not faltered at all. We have been able to support all of our users. Our SLAs have not dropped. So this signals to me, we don't necessarily need to always be thinking about how we support that walk-up experience. We can maybe structure our service desk a little bit differently and be able to utilize our staff in better, more effective ways than just being available and waiting for somebody to walk up and hand them the laptop. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think the time to enact this change and make some adjustments in that walk-up experience is as soon as we get back to the office, while people are sort of already in this mode that they don't need to see our service desk folks in person. So anyway, that's been one of my big eye-openers with this.
Yeah.
That's great. It's good to hear.
Yeah, this is Gary. Very, very similarly, I think we've learned, and it's actually, for us, it's been a little bit different in our international colleagues, our ex-US versus our US. We found, because we've had a lot of work, remote workers in our international offices, so they've adapted from day one. I think locally in the US, I've been somewhat surprised, and echoing what Kimberly says, it's because we don't have a service desk that people could walk up to. People have actually done a very decent job of kind of figuring stuff out on their own. When they've used IT and service desk as a crutch, they're not necessarily doing that anymore. One of the other things also as a surprise for us, at least for me, has been in the first few days, sort of the managing of the work-life balance. Really, everybody just, because of all the tools that we have, people are 24/7. So somebody gets an idea, 10 o'clock at night, they email somebody or text somebody, and now people are responding. We've had to sort of dial that down and place a better value on our downtime and our family time. And our senior leadership noticed that actually. And beginning next Monday, they've instituted a mandatory 12 to 1. No one can do any work. We all have to spend time with our families, have lunch with our families, take a walk with our families, whatever that may be. So because we're not really good at setting limits for ourselves, our senior leadership had to sort of set limits for us. And I think that was really a good thing. We've also made our video conferencing platform available for off hours for people to use for conversations with family and friends. So that's been able to keep the connection as well. So yeah, so I think they're the things that have surprised us.
Anyone else?
I'm sure there have been other surprises, Stephanie. I just think that we've got a couple of shy people on the call.
Sorry, I was speaking. I was on mute. My apologies.
No
So the big surprise we had at Verizon, at least that I've seen, is we have 1,600 stores that we directly control with 23,000 mobile devices in them, and over 2/3 of those are now shuttered until the near future. So this is a huge revenue generation area for Verizon. And I think the biggest surprise is that those stores are sacrosanct with respect to the technology that was within them and how it was used and what you could and could not do. And the consideration they are now potentially moving these to people's homes to be able to do sales directly out of their homes is going to really change our landscape in the future, I believe, because I think they're going to see that a second opportunity, a second revenue source potentially, not just the stores, but potentially people doing this from home as well. So I see a bright future with that. I'm just curious as to if they will allow it.
Interesting. Pete, what about from your perspective? Anything that's surprising you from the technology side or from the people side?
No. We're all set up for being able to support people remotely. That's why we're going to design we're going to. So I'm not on the IT side. I'm sure our desktop folks are probably freaking out. But as far as the AV is concerned, we're not surprised by any of this. It's actually it actually changed our business model. So it's a little bit surprising in that manner that we could do more than we thought we could from home and remotely. We can do more support than we have. It's also forced our customers to accept some of that kind of support. A lot of times we deal with a lot of EAs and they really want things a certain way and they want you in the room to help them make the thing go. And when you can't go and you're at your desk and they're at their desk and you're helping them remotely, it does make people realize, oh, we can do some of this in a different manner. But for the most part, this is kind of business as usual, but in a different way. So it's not really surprising.
Good.
Pete, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, and maybe this might apply to others. So I think about the use of video in dealing with customer issues, or even, Jim, when you think about the online sales or person-to-person sales, when it comes to video, the only way we can really show something is to use our mobile device to be able to walk and go grab that video content. So I think about the customer experience, the digital experience, as we're dealing with customer calls and that whole experience, and either selling something or fixing something or troubleshooting something. I'm wondering if, since we do have a lot of folks at home that are doing quite a few activities that they normally wouldn't do, or they would do face-to-face, if that changes things, or has anyone experienced anything new within their own organizations where that might be an opportunity to maybe make some improvements with just the mobile applications or the mobile interface?
So what's interesting is our company is almost 100% video enabled. So we have been doing video conferencings for every call that we've ever done for probably the last year and a half or so. It used to not be that way. They've made a culture change before I got here. And because it's so heavily video intensive, it's not like anything new. So we aren't doing anything differently in the way that we're communicating. We don't do anything with troubleshooting things like we don't have people with home video conferencing systems except for an all-in-one kind of a system. So if it would be different if we had to go into a conference room and like use a camera to kind of like look around and see what's going on physically in the room. But in this case, everyone's using their laptop. We're not responsible for laptops. We're not even responsible for the software on the back end. We're really only responsible for supporting live events and helping conference rooms work. And right now, that's not happening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mike, how are things going over at the Google homestead? You guys can generally work from anywhere all the time anyway. Are you experiencing anything like that?
No, I mean, I think the biggest surprise sort of has been how quickly we're able to mobilize our fairly large TVC workforce to allow them to be able to work from home. So, prior to this, all full-time employees could work from wherever, anytime, anywhere. But with TVCs, it was a little different, where we would essentially not have them have access to certain resources after hours or when they're out of office. It seemed like
for us?
So contractors.
Contractors.
Yep. Yeah. And so, seemingly overnight that sort of changed, right? And everybody got access to everything that they needed to do their core job all at once, really without seeming to miss a beat. And I think it kind of spoke a lot to kind of how well we could have kept up our morale during a challenging time like we're all facing now. We were all able to continue working, to continue doing what we would normally do without really, any inconveniences.
Terrific. Mark, you also speak to a lot of people in your overseas facilities. You have people all around the world, and I think your corporate headquarters is not in the U.S. where you're located. Has the dynamic changed? One of the things that I notice in dealing with these kind of crises is they become humanizing. So instead of just rote calls taking place, you now start to get a little bit of personality into the calls and start feeling like people are dealing, especially in a global pandemic, with what you're dealing with. Any changes for you, or just normal business? How's that working out with all the various global sites?
I think the first 5 minutes of every call now, this probably isn't limited to just global calls. Everyone's checking to see how things are going in everyone else's backyard. I'm not sure if that's. I mean, that's kind of a simple answer. And globally, it's hitting everyone a little bit different, and I think that's probably our prime concern. But yeah, hope that answers the question.
Sure, absolutely. Another question from me. Let's look at when we're done with this. Let's look at now. We obviously, the jokes were 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except March, which has 197. That's been going around the internet for the last few days, at least, if not weeks. March ended. We're now in April. We've pretty much lost April. Most of the parts of the globe now are looking at being locked down at least through April, and we may be getting into May. So, depending upon how this goes, this could be a real extended period of time. Once we get out of it and you get back to whatever normal is for whatever companies have survived and what format they've survived in, are we going to plan anything differently or do anything differently? Have we started those conversations, or have you started to think about some of those conversations about, hey, it might be nice if everybody has XYZ, or if we've put in some training for this, or any new thoughts around any of that?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I referenced my wife earlier, and Peter said something as well. People are adopting this home technology, and for us, we were always heavy on Skype without cameras. I think people were afraid to use their cameras. And what I'm expecting to see now, I don't have a crystal ball, but as we turn the corner, we get back to the office, people are going to be more acceptable to using video. And referencing my wife, the average user is going to realize they can do it without any help. I think that touches on what Peter said. They're not going to be so dependent, and I think this will really push the video industry, and not just what we're doing here with laptops and web cameras, but I think it will also push a lot more real estate video rooms, hard rooms utilization up. I think this is going to be a major culture change for the enterprise environment, and for those who like me, I probably prefer to have my camera off most of the time. it's going to change that. I think a lot more people will turn the cameras on and
Yeah, I agree, Mark.
not expect help to do it.
I agree.
I also think that while we're all sort of on lockdown and sort of unable to hang out with our friends and family in person, it's sort of forcing, right, that hand of having people adopt naturally the collaboration technology that we all do for work that we're all familiar with. But now, I talk to all of my friends and they're like, hey, can we do a call on Facebook Messenger? Or can we do a call on Hangouts or Zoom or whatever? And it's becoming part of that regular user journey, right, for friendships, where we're having to start adopting that for our just everyday social existence. And I hope that as we kind of exit out of this COVID world, that some of the lessons learned from that will kind of start taking shape into what we do at work as well, right? And not have people, to Mark's point, be afraid of using a video camera. Like, I think those days should be kind of behind us, hopefully.
Yeah, the great advantage of this horrible situation is I can now tell people what I do for a living. All the stuff that you're doing, that's what I do for a living. That's what I've always been doing. Now you get it.
I've been thinking about that too. My kids are the first generation who understand what I do now. My parents would never understand it. But, my 5-year-olds, oh, Daddy sets up the camera for my karate class over Zoom.
Well, I don't know if you guys... Oh, go ahead, Evan.
Is there a devil's advocate role to be played here?
Absolutely.
I'm sure you'll do it if there is.
No rule police here, Evan. Go for it. Tell us we're wrong.
No, I don't think that you're wrong. And but talking, based off of like what Mike said, Mike and I have worked together, and Mike and I are also socially friends. And we've been talking about, grabbing a drink for a while. Does this interaction, now that we've actually seen each other face to face, actually prolong that, that human interaction of us actually getting together physically? And I think that in some ways this is great to be able to, connect with others in the industry or connect with people on my team or people within my organization. I still personally, and this is odd because I'm maybe the youngest of the bunch, I still feel that this is not would be my go-to choice of interacting. It would be my primary mode of communication either.
I'm not sure I'm not sure they're saying it would be the primary, Evan. I know, and I've told you this since we chat every day. Yesterday I had a Zoom call with 12 of my college friends. Now, they live all over the country, and to be honest, we're like, why didn't we do this before? We only see each other once every couple years or whatever, and we had the best time, and we each bought a cocktail and, the virtual cocktail hour. Will we continue doing this after this nightmare is over? Probably, only because we don't have the opportunity to go out and see each other. And, you and Mike can meet in the city and have a drink.
True. And this is why I love working with Nancy. She is the she-devil's advocate to my devil's advocate.
Well, I was going to add, too, that this might be one of the best training fields that we've had in this space, because I can name 20 people that I know that have never even turned on a video cam or Zoom or Blue Jeans or Micro Teams that are now working it like a champ. So I think that there's probably some pretty powerful stuff there, that we've got a whole group of end users that have never used this technology that are using it, and it's easy for them, and it's not perfect, but they know how to use it, and they may be more comfortable using it in work environments and other purposes now than they have in the past. So, I know so many schools and colleges that they're not online or web-based, and they just don't really use that, especially some of the private schools, and now they're, of course, completely online learning platforms. So things are changing, and I think that it's definitely going to create a whole new end user base of knowledge workers that have never had this before. So I think that piece is pretty powerful.
Yeah, Stephanie, it's interesting because it's a blog that I'm actually got triggered to write today. If you turn on any late night TV or any news shows or anything else, all of these things that we've been complaining are not good enough quality video because sometimes they chop or sometimes the audio is a little echoey, or all these things that were actually just red herrings, because it's okay for us. We're fine. I mean, we've obviously been suffering some bandwidth issues on this call. If you watch the video of it, you'll see occasionally somebody was freezing or something was happening. But you know what? For the most part, it was fine, and we know that that's because the home internet and the broadbands are being pounded. I don't know if you can hear my wife up there screeching. She's doing early intervention with young kids in the New Jersey area over video for the first time now. She's using a Poly Studio. She's got the best camera of anyone on our team, but she's still, we're both pounding the internet at the same time. I think you're just going to see more and more people accepting the fact that this is what this technology does. Now, to go back, Kimberly, to what you were saying before, around this concept of smarter working that I was all in on, and it really, Evan, addresses your point. This isn't going to change my lifestyle as a remote worker in any way once it's over. I need to be where I need to be. If I need to be in a meeting with people because I have to look at a site or inspect equipment or present at a conference, I'm going to be there. If I have to meet at a client's office in a city, a train ride away or an airplane ride away, I'm still going to go. But my option from being smarter and smarter working and working from home is that my daily commute is down 4 steps into my office in my basement. So the even if we get 10, 20% of the people adopting that going forward, where I'm not going to travel to a physical place just to sit in front of a computer because I've got the screens at home, even if it's just that small, it's still going to be a major change as to how we do with things. I mean, are you hearing that as well, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think, at least for us, I don't think we're going to be looking to shed real estate because I think we'll still need a lot of it. And I think at a certain point there will be still that desire for business as usual to actually be in the office, to have those water cooler conversations, to bump into people. I think that's healthy social human interaction, right? I think what this does is it just validates the fact that this is another alternative where that's not possible, right? If I can't be in the office for whatever reason, whether it be private or whether I just literally can't be there because I'm in a different city, the idea to be able to connect through cameras and microphones, it's the second best thing, in my opinion, right? If I can't hang out with Gary in person, we can do this, right? So I think it's a viable alternative. It's better than a phone, right? Because I can see Gary, I can see what he doesn't like what I'm saying because he'll look a certain way, or I can. But in general, right, like it just gives you more visual cues. It gives you more auditory cues. I'm able to have more of a real conversation.
And we're using webcams now, Mike, in the way that they're intended. Remember that going back in our industry, the Danto arm test. If you can touch the web camera, then you're actually at the right distance. We're these beautiful head and shoulder shots. We can see emotions. We can see if we're reaching people. When we go back to these conference rooms that we're building, if the cameras you're putting in are not able to make these really good I can see your face shots, people are going to start to say, oh, this isn't as good as what we had at home. So the conference room's the camera technology in the conference room's going to have to come up to speed. A lot of it on the market is.
Yeah,
so 100%. Does the interface. So does the interface. So if you are able to control the layout of the screen, where you put the content, and you can see a list of the people joining, and your room can't quite do all that, that's going to also affect my job, actually.
Sure. Expectations change.
And David, I was just curious. One thing we haven't actually talked about were the tools that we're using. Obviously, we're on Blue Jeans for this call, but I would imagine that some of us, and probably Mike could speak to this, is like he's in a fully integrated, G Suite stack. Whereas like we just rolled out Teams this week actually as well. So we use Skype internally for certain things. They want to, we're going to start piloting Teams. And then we use Zoom for our external video conferences, where Zoom actually happens to work better on our personal laptops on our home network than it does on our VPN client. But Skype as our VPN client works perfectly. So there's for me, like I'm actually utilizing multiple tools at any one given time to execute quote unquote business as usual.
Welcome to my world.
You take the drawing piece of it too. You could have Bluebeam or PlanGrid. Add multiple layers of other stuff that we may or may not use in our day to day.
Yeah, and Evan, Mark said earlier, or I'm sorry, maybe Gary, I don't remember who, said that they just rolled out Teams and they're only on one platform now. Like you said, we have so many multiple platforms. I never know, should I be going on my laptop? Should I be VPNing into my desktop? Or should I go on my personal? So to have one platform would just be so much easier. And so, this way everybody would be able to just have the same experience all the time, and everybody would get the training they needed on that specific platform.
Yeah, I mean, like, are we the only ones that are using multiple manufacturers, multiple suites of tools, or is everyone kind of fully invested?
No, I can tell you as an expert in the industry that people are fighting this conversation continually all the time, and the manufacturers and the platform providers will tell you that they want to interoperate, but they define interoperability in their own narrow terms, and it works for in the first person. Our interoperability works, but theirs doesn't. Everybody's going through that, and there are certain tools that are better than other tools at certain jobs. Forever, I'm always going to be the guy that's saying, hey, pick the tool you need for the job. You can't pick the tool out of your tool bag until you know what job you're doing. Don't bring a hammer to cut glass. There is no one universal right thing, and I use as many of them as you do all the time. In addition, I'm online with Twitter, with LinkedIn, with chats, with email messages, personal and business. The communication bombards you. I'm glad I have a lot of computers in front of me at home.
David, I think that's the lesson that actually I've learned and we've learned at Amicus as an IT team. Is we've enabled all of these tools for people, specifically the Microsoft suite, and we do have Blue Jeans and some other video conferencing platforms. But the lesson that we've learned is I think we need to do a better job of communicating what to use when, what tools to use when, because a lot of them do overlap. And that's kind of been like anytime I send out a communication, I get an email back and it says, well, what am I supposed to use this time? When do I use this? When do I use that? And we think we're communicating it and training people on it, but I don't know if we're getting everybody when we do that training. So I think the lesson that I'm going to take to the future is really never stop training. Never stop communicating, collaborate with our comms team and our HR team to help inform our workforce on everything that's available to them and kind of what to use when.
Good point. All right, so why don't we go around the horn one more time since we're running out of time here, and let's give everybody a kind of a last word on this. And I would guess probably the thing that I would want to let everybody do is what's their biggest takeaway from this entire event? I mean, is it to have more stuff in stock? Is it to have a better help desk, or more people, or less people, or let's go in. Let me pull up the order that I had over here. Let's start with you, Evan. When we come out of this thing, what's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
I think for years now, as this UC audiovisual environment has been evolving, we've been planning or trending towards the future. The future's here. I mean, we got cut over into the future in a matter of days. I think that's kind of interesting, like the way in which we've been able to respond to it, be resolute in our work. But I also business as usual would be different moving forward, and there's no more talk about it. It's actually here. It's an interesting moment to live in and through.
We had no choice. Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, so I think for me, I think we don't have to give up our work-life balance. We could use all of this technology and still maintain that work-life balance, and then and we can still, in Amicus, this is very important to us. We can still use these tools and live our lives with empathy to each other and to our patients, and that's the most important thing for us.
Good. Jim, what about you? What are your biggest takeaway from this?
I kept thinking of that, I don't know if it's an Aesop fable, but the cricket and the ant, right? We've been preparing for this, to pair what Evan said, for a very long time. We're used to it. Our time, I wrote down this quote before we started, our time is now. This is our time to say, hey, we know how to do this. We can help you. And the other 2 points I want to say is thanks to Hurricane Sandy to prove that this could work many, many years ago here in New York. And now the rest of the world is seeing what we went through. And then my last point to everyone is make sure to put on pants, because you will stand up someday.
Okay, that's one of the
Sounds
things
like
that
you're
was in,
speaking from experience.
Oh yeah.
one of the things that was in my article is you have to keep a routine, whatever that routine is. If it's waking up at a certain time, if it's getting dressed, if it's working out, just because you're working from home, it's exactly the same. And that, my routine, thank God, every day always includes clean clothes, pants, underwear, the whole 9 yards. Uh, Kimberly, what's your biggest takeaway from this so far?
Yeah, to maybe just try to summarize it, despite the fact that I think we were really well prepared and situated for this, that doesn't mean we still don't have a little bit more to learn, a little bit more to do, particularly around supporting the managers and teams who are new to this, who are really just kind of coming around to this new way of working, and helping them continue on that journey. I think once this is over, they're now over a hurdle, and let's help them continue with the race, I guess. I think that's one takeaway, and the other, some people have already said it, but I feel like empathy is the biggest thing here. While this works for a lot of people, it doesn't work for everybody. A lot of people don't have their home situation set up in a way that they can, carve out a place to work and be private. And so just really kind of understanding that what might work for me or for you doesn't work for everybody, and we need to understand that and help those people.
And you don't want to leave out that everybody needs a really good headset, right?
And don't forget, really good headset, really good camera, all of that.
Okay. Thank you, Kimberly. Mark, what about you? What are your biggest takeaways from this?
I think you really had an interesting comment about bandwidth and home users, and that's very astute. And I'm curious if my audio is dropping out for anyone at all, or my video. But
your audio's actually been very good. I don't know what headset you're wearing, but it kind of is making me think of Locutus. If that LED comes right into the camera, it's a little scary.
Noticed that when I connected, because I never used my camera. I realized it's like probably blinding people.
But no, there have been some dropouts on this call with audio and video, and there have been some strained noise. But you know what? Everybody's still going to enjoy the information we put forward. So, what's your takeaway?
So bandwidth, I think, is good, and without trying to plug anyone, I know what your answer is going to be, but you and Gary have really good camera images. So maybe I should ask Gary, because I know what you have. Gary, what are you using for a camera?
Well, I have to admit, I'm just using the camera on my Lenovo laptop. I think it's the lighting and the staging that my wife took care of earlier today.
Do you have a makeup artist there, Gary?
The winner there.
Well, it looks great.
He put his own lipstick on.
I think having a really good camera at home is very important. But if you're looking at me right now, I did this test recently. If I kill the lights that I've set up just for the call, you can immediately see the difference that it's not going to be as good. So lighting and a good headset will make a big difference, especially, and also again in the video that I did, looking at the camera, which makes people think you're looking in their eyes. So those are tricks. I have a video out that does that. If you guys want the link to it, I can send it to you. But it's not just the camera; it's everything. And Mr. Duda, what's your biggest takeaway from all this?
I think all of us on this call are kind of fortunate in the sense that we're able to have these conversations, and we do this, right? We live this reality on a day-to-day basis. What I'd love to see happen after this is all over is some of the players that aren't represented here, not just the people in the AV field, but really people that aren't set up for AV. Again, thinking about smaller companies that have never really thought that this was important, right? That they don't have the budget for it, or that it seems hard, or it's not really part of our culture. Like, I would love to move the needle on that, and I'd love to see that start taking shape, because I think we can all talk about tweaks that we can make to our individual businesses, but frankly, we're all kind of already there, right? We're looking to make that 5 or 10% of a difference. I would love to see companies that haven't had anything go from zero to something after this is over, because we're clearly demonstrating the importance of this. And I think, groups like the IMCCA can do a fantastic job educating people who maybe don't have a lot of the knowledge around what UC and VC are, to spread the word and to let them really understand what this world is all about, and to not make them afraid of it. I think if we can do that, and combine that with the empathy that Gary and Kimberly were talking about, I think that does humanity a lot of good, right? And I think that would be an amazing thing to see when and all this is over. Plus, I'd love to have that beer with Evan at some point. So,
I want to come.
all right, you're in.
What's your
If
takeaway?
it's whiskey,
Nancy?
I'll come.
So, I think from Morgan Stanley's standpoint, we've been able to function, and I put this again in quotes, business as usual. But, the empathy that I would hope would come, we're talking to our vendors every day, and, they're furloughing people. There's no construction sites open. We're losing our techs, and I just hope, like, when we come out of it, not only are they our techs and our vendors, a lot of them are friends and we've known them for a long time. So I just really hope that, we can continue to, do what we can, as employing them, to let them do what they can do, pay them. I mean, I know I'm speaking because I'm not writing a check for Morgan Stanley, but, at the end of the day, we're gonna hear a lot of people have lost their jobs, and we've already started to see that. Just with some of the integrators and techs and smaller companies that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I would like to think that maybe our industry as a whole or can help that. And I don't know what that solution is, and I don't know what that help looks like right now. But again, I think coming out of this, I think we're going to be surprised at how the domino effect really affected the people that we work with within our industry.
Devastating in so many places inside and outside of our industry, and how we rebuild is going to be very difficult. I wish we had prioritized in our industry what we're dealing with, this technology, a little bit more. Imagine if all of the out-of-work AV integrators and technology integrators would be able to support the help desk around people that are home for the first time. It was an opportunity that we missed, and we were screaming about it for years. So hopefully that will change as well. So all really good points. Pete, what are your takeaways from here?
Well, our company has this technique they use called Follow Me Home, and it's how they built our company, where the founder would go and ask customers and observe them using our technology or our product or whatever they were trying to develop. We use that technique, a lot in our own inner circles. So we do our own Follow Me Homes. We work with our customers a lot. I hadn't done a whole lot until this whole situation went down. So I actually sat down, met with a lot of the EAs in our company. We have like hundreds of them. So we've been meeting with them regularly. Because of this, I learned I need to do that more, because that'll help me improve our business offering, the way that they engage with us, the way they interact, open tickets, get the support they need. All of that is all being redone and retooled right now because of those Follow Me Homes that we recently did. So my takeaway is to do that more often and regularly.
Pete, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you very much. Stephanie, I'm going to come to you in a minute and give you the last word here, but I'm going to put everybody on the hook for a moment. When we see we're coming out at the light at the end of the tunnel on this one, guys, when we're a few days away from being able to unlock the doors, I'm going to invite you all back. Hopefully you can make it, and let's do what the lessons learned are when it's not just a couple of weeks, when it's been, a month or 2 months and things aren't funny anymore, to get your opinion. So hopefully you'll all join us again for that.
Looking forward to it.
There you go. Okay.
Thanks for putting this together, David.
Oh, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Stephanie, let me give you the last word here. What are your takeaways from all of this?
Yeah, so some final thoughts. I think the big thing is give grace. Give grace to yourself. Give grace to your teams. Give grace to those that aren't tech savvy and that aren't necessarily familiar with the technology. I think that we have a lot of work to do in that area. I'd also say we have a great group of people on this particular session here, a lot of bigger companies, a lot of more advanced companies. So it's not surprising that many of you were prepared. But I think about the very small businesses, the ones that are primarily on their smartphone and they don't really use technology the way that they are now or that they need to, because they're now purely at home. So some of those businesses will make it. And I think about the rural communities, the ones that don't have the bandwidth that they need to do these things. So that's also a concern. And I'd say the last thing is for these small businesses and even for your teams at home is providing tips. One of the things that I noticed with my kids' school is they created a whole new program, Heritage at Home. So many companies could create the same thing, the name of your company at home, and put together tips When you are at home, these are the things that you got to be concerned with. These are the tools that we have, and these are the ways you can connect to these different tools that we have in place. So that would be more of a tips and a key takeaway. Those kinds of things are enabling businesses and thinking more about the remote workforce more than ever. So it's great to connect with you all today, and I've learned a lot from you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us for this webinar. We are going to absolutely keep doing them throughout this crisis at the IMCCA. Thank you to the IMCCA. Please go to our pandemic support site. Just go to imcca.org and pull it down on resources. Thank you very much to my colleagues at Poly for sponsoring and helping us put this one together this time. Until we get the next one out there, thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.